Do I need the mic, or is this fine? Hey, Keon, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm just, no, sorry. No, I wasn't calling you out, Keon. I was just asking, do I need the mic, or is this okay? Okay, cool. I'll go with this. So yeah, I was asked if I would do my devotional, testimonial thing, and at first I wasn't sure, like, well, do I want to go off my typical devotional topic? Then I decided, no, actually, I really want to try and give a brief sort of version of my testimonial. I'll talk a little bit about my college years, but really I do want to kind of focus on what it's been like the past 3 years. But that is all informed by that. And I was trying to think how I wanted to, what verse really came to mind for me, because there have certainly been many that have not just propped me up over the years, some that have led me over the years, some that have kind of toyed with my head, especially. And I really settled on actually 3 that have been really essential to me, I would say, over the years, and in fact have kind of built on each other, at least in my life, in a very fascinating way. And the first one is Zephaniah 3:17. The Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing. This is something that I remember my parents talked to me a lot about, especially in high school. It was kind of like, that's like your first experience of sort of adult life. You're not quite there, but you're at least starting to experience like, well, now you have more responsibilities, you have more things you need to do. The weight of the world seems to be crushing you, even though you're still living at home with your parents and being fed 3 meals a day and you don't have to pay for anything. But you still feel like that. And I remember, especially in high school, I know a lot of you experience like college being, good Lord, this is, academic torture, this is hours in studio, this is the pinnacle of exhaustion. For me, it was actually high school. College was, I will admit, relatively okay in terms of academia and whatnot. High school was miserable. I finished my high school diploma in 2 years, and the last 2 years of high school was just taking college courses. And it was the sort of like, you guys now deal with your all-nighters. I didn't do that in college. I dealt with those in high school. That was what I was doing. And I remember this verse coming up a lot. My parents saying, trying to remind me that in the midst of this place where I felt like I was totally on my own, and I'll continue on that thread later on, but in this midst of this place I felt like I was totally on my own, to try and re-emphasize that, no, you're not. Even in a closed box, even in a locked room, my faith is supposed to remind me that I'm not alone, that I do actually have a mighty one who will save. Not just someone who will save, it's a mighty one who will then rejoice over me with gladness, who will quiet me by his love, and who will exult over me with loud singing. That to me I think is fascinating, because it's not just saying, here's this conqueror who's killed all the bad guys, but now pat, you're safe, go home, little so-and-so. I don't know why I said so-and-so. But we literally are told that, there's that aspect of saving, and then there is also this aspect of you're being hushed to sleep. You're being sung with. You're being, you're having someone who laughs with joy at the things that you do in his name. And that was really essential to me in that break from high school into college. Senior year of high school was miserable for me. I finished high school, I unfriended like 250 people. I only keep in contact with one person from high school now. It was that bad. And I'll be honest, most of them were nice people, but I was a jerk, and I was the one who was like, I can't handle any of this, I'm out, see y'all later. No, actually I won't, bye. And part of that was due to the fact that the senior year of high school, depression became this thing that I could not believe was happening to me. I was this like happy-go-lucky, you know, oh, Max is the goofball who was formerly homeschooled and didn't own a pair of jeans until sophomore year because all he wore were like those polyester pants that unzipped at the knees. You could turn into shorts. So basically, I was really cool. And yet, for some reason, you know, I won't say for some reason, but for senior year of high school was when I started to realize that I was not happy. I was not happy in the midst of being in a situation where I should be happy. I had finished a school that was renowned as being incredibly tough. I had a lot of friends, even though in that midst of that, I like totally flaked on them. I had a family who had comforted me in every way possible, like, and in really actually Christ-like ways. Not pampering me. I wasn't, you know, babied in a sense. I was literally cared for in what I still think is one of the most beautiful ways possible. And yet I felt extremely alone. I felt like I was on my own in every aspect of life. And that continued into college. You know, college I think was actually one of the first places where, despite being raised in a Christian home, despite being raised in a church that was flourishing in many regards, you know, I was born and raised with Redeemer Presbyterian in New York. This is at a time when it was had started at this one campus, and we were seeing it, you know, bloom across the city, and it was this amazing thing. And everybody was talking about how this is great. We're expanding. We're getting to know people all over the place. What's it like being a kid who was raised here and getting to see this wonderful church experience? And I was like, well, it's great. I feel miserable. I didn't say that part, but I did, you know, I felt it. And college was the first place that I actually thought to myself, maybe I actually wasn't much of a Christian before this. Maybe I was just, you know, saying the words, singing the songs, and it was all going in one ear and out the other. I remember at the end of freshman year of college having this moment where listening to a sermon actually at RUF Summer Conference. So it was an RUF event. And the pastor was going through a verse in Revelation. And I'm struggling to remember I couldn't remember what the exact verse was. But I remember breaking down in a room of like 300 people and just sobbing. And I was raised Presbyterian. If you know anything about them, they're the frozen chosen. They're the ones who don't move. They're the ones who don't move a muscle. They're the ones who are like, shows of emotion are bad. Don't ever do that. And here I was in this room of 300 people as an extreme introvert. I still score like 80 to 90 on the Myers-Briggs, so that just goes to show you how introvert I am. And yet I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help thinking, holy cow, I don't think I've actually believed this stuff before this moment. I mean, at that point, I was goodness sakes, I'm now 19 years old, and I was raised my entire life in this, and I think I've just heard it for the first time. That was incredible to me. That was incredible to go from that verse of Zephaniah 3:17, where I had told myself that over and over again. I had told myself, okay, remember the Lord your God is in your midst. Somebody you want to say, you know, okay, keep going. I used that as like my passwords for a couple different sites, literally because for me that was one way of like, I'm going to memorize this. I'm going to use this in everyday life. So if I sign into Facebook, I'm going to have to remember this verse. Don't worry, it's not that password anymore. And so it was fascinating then to, in college, realize that I've been saying all these things, and wow, I'm only now suddenly getting the meaning behind that. I'm only now starting to actually feel what it means to have someone in your midst. And not just sort of saying these words that might present themselves as, you know, let me appease my worry, let me appease my anxiety, let me appease my depression. And so I started to think, okay, this is something more real to me. This is something that I can actually work with. Um, but I didn't start to feel better immediately. I think I had those moments early on of thinking, okay, this is a revelation to me. This is actually something new in me. This is that rebirth some people talk about in a weird way. But I wasn't feeling better immediately. Sophomore year and junior year of college, my depression plummeted me to a low that I have not experienced since then, and I hope never to experience again. I knew what it was like to have total disregard for myself, to think that my own physical well-being is not worth it. To the point where self-harm was not a problem. I didn't think about it at all. Culminating in sophomore year where I attempted to take my life twice. One time getting relatively close on the 59th Street Bridge, which crosses from Queens into Manhattan, and only really stopping because there were two joggers who were passing by. It was like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., who passed by and saw me on the fence, climbing. One stopped to call the cops, the other stopped to ask me and talk to me. Junior year and senior year, this, for me, I'm now, at this point in junior year and senior year, I'm reflecting on the past year and a half, I'm reflecting on the past 2 years, and thinking, I am miserable. What is happening to me? I thought I figured it out. I thought that moment in freshman year was this awakening that all of a sudden, I've got it. My life is on the right track. I'm going for it. I'm good. And yet, obviously, it wasn't. Obviously, I was really not feeling it. And I think that was kind of that second revelation. I say second because really it's only now that I'm able to realize, that first moment in college was literally just one in a series of God actually kind of flicking me on the forehead and saying, hey, I've been here. Do you want to talk? And me actually saying, okay, yes, I want to talk. And then after a while, kind of backing up a bit. Senior year of college, that was my second realization of, I actually do want to talk to you more. I want to know what it's like to feel, peace. I was not about saying, I want to be overjoyed all the time. I was just saying, Lord, I want calm. I want hope. That word hope really was, I think, essential to me in college, and then coming here even. As college ended up, I realized I actually ended at a much better place than I ever could be, because that senior year, not only dwelling on the topic in my own head and thinking, okay, what does it mean to actually talk to God? What does it mean to actually let Him into my heart? But I suddenly experienced people around me who wanted to know me. People some of whom knew what I had dealt with, a lot who had no clue. And this is through my RUF. This is through my undergrad experience with ministry. With people who, for no reason other than they knew a portion of the gospel, they knew a portion of what it meant to actually just be human, they wanted to talk and just get to know me. And all of a sudden I started to feel that second peace. I started to feel that second calm, and I was able to breathe again. And so I graduated and started my internship here, and it's ironic, I was actually just talking to Young about this, that when I actually started the internship, I knew I wanted to do it. I knew I probably had a decent amount of ability to do it. I was still very nervous about it. And I was still very much like, I don't know. I mean, some people have told me I should do this, but is that really enough evidence? Like, am I actually going to be okay here? I mean, I just don't know if I can handle this. And I was kind of flooding back to all those thoughts that, I think a lot of us actually know you hit adulthood, whenever that means. For me it was like, well, I'll graduate and I'll be an adult. Some people feel it earlier, some people feel it later. Adulthood is often sold to us as like this new beginning of fearlessness and hope, and we've got it all because we made it through all that stuff. So we're all good now. And coming here was interesting for me because I actually did feel a lot better. My college years, like I said, that was really rough. I haven't experienced something like that since then, and I hope not to. I know I'm, never going to be a completely whole individual. I know I'm going to have struggles. I know I'm going to have difficulties, but I felt a lot better. But it wasn't, I wasn't good. I wasn't like this. I've got it all set now that I've finished college and got a degree in my pocket. Depression had lessened significantly. I still had bad times. I still had days where I was just like, I can't do this. I just feel like I can't get out of bed. I still messed up relationships. I still had these plenty of times where I could not figure out how to maintain friendships with people or maintain romantic relationships with people, because for me, I just kind of like, I would blank out, I would go AFK and just stop talking to people without even thinking about it. And like somebody would talk to me like 6 months later and say, you were a jerk, you didn't talk to me for 3 months. And I said, I'm so sorry. I did not know I was doing that at all. I still felt alone in the midst of a crowd. I could still walk through a really busy campus and have days where I was like, I feel like I'm on my own. What am I doing? What's going on here? I still looked for hope. But coming here, I started to see more examples of God's grace and goodness than I have ever seen in my life. And I really do think, I'm not one to say that there is, when people talk about like relationships, for example, there's not one person for me or something like that. I don't have that sort of finality. But I do believe we are put here for a purpose. I do believe we are sent places for reasons. I do believe we do things for reasons. We have free will, but it's still predestined, right? And I realized for me, I suddenly started to feel like, holy cow, okay, I felt nervous from the get-go here. I didn't think I had the skill or ability to maintain whatever it meant to be an intern with RUF. But I'm starting to see things that I never would have expected to see. I'm starting to see beauty in the world that I hadn't thought of before. I'm starting to see relationships bloom between people, friendly or romantic or otherwise, that I would have thought, like, that seems impossible. Like, why can't this just be all the time? And I started to see ministry happen in a way that I never thought before. I started to see people reaching out to people that they would never talk to otherwise, other than the sake that they had this background in the gospel. The same reason that my friends in college ended up reaching out to me. They had no real connection to me in the typical sense. I was a history major. They were financiers. I was the homeschool kid. They were born and raised in suburbia. And yet they reached out to me and they loved me and I loved them back. And I've seen the same thing here. I've seen people who, if you were to look at each other just on a blank piece, on just a piece of paper and like list like 4 attributes, you'd be like, well, these people wouldn't normally be friends, right? That wouldn't make sense. And yet, this group has a multitude of people who have such tight-knit bonds with each other for, again, no reason other than at first they got to know someone through one singular background, having a faith, or at bare minimum, interest in this faith that doesn't make sense at a lot of times, that I still get confused by. And that leads me to my second passage, which really came up, I would say, a lot in the last 2 years. It's John 20, 11 through 18. It says, "But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. They said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping?' She said to them, 'They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him.' Having said this, she turned and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, 'Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?' Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, 'Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away.' Jesus said to her, 'Mary.' She turned and said to him in Aramaic, 'Rabboni,' which means teacher. Jesus said to her, 'Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God.' Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, 'I have seen the Lord,' and that he had said these things to her." This started to come back to me a lot in the last 2 years for a couple reasons. One, Mary wept because she feared hope was gone. I've wept for that same reason. I've wept for thinking, what hope do I have? What hope might I gain? What hope have I lost? And working here for the past 3 years, I've talked to people. I've wept with people. I've heard you talk about your lives, and I've gone home and wept. I don't cry a whole lot, but hearing stories that people have said, have talked about, feeling hurt, feeling struggle, that's brought me to tears. And yet, that wasn't the final period. That wasn't the final spell of it. Because Mary wept, and then she saw Jesus. Even if she didn't first recognize him, he recognized her. He knew her. And all of a sudden, in the midst of her thinking all hope is gone, he came to her and said, "No, not only is hope not gone, hope is still here. And hope has bloomed into something more than you could ever imagine. I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Jesus saw her and he told her of the hope that he embodied. Not just the simple hope of, I hope I have a good life. I hope I am happy 4 out of 5 times, whatever it is. The hope that despite him literally dying, that he was raised from the dead. And the fact that we will literally, experience death and disease and famine and all sorts of things in our lives, that we have a hope that goes beyond all that. That we have a hope that says, I still have you. I am still in your midst. I am still going to rejoice over you with gladness. I am still going to quiet you by my love, and I'm going to exult over you with loud singing. And Mary, at the second part of that, the last part of that was Mary Magdalene went and announced the disciples. She was a vessel. She was not just a passive, Jesus tells her and then she's like, good, great. She was this person who Jesus said, now go and tell. Go and tell people what you've seen, what I've told you. And I would say that in my last 3 years, when I've been here, I've talked to a lot of you. I've talked about a multitude of things. I hope you guys realize how much you guys have been vessels, even when you don't think you have been. Mary was a vessel for the gospel. Mary literally told the gospel from its outset, essentially, to the other disciples. You know, this was pastoral in most sense of the word. And I really hope that you guys know that, I'll be honest, for me, you guys have done the same thing. I have had way too many times where I've gone home and thought to myself, that conversation I had with someone, I think I've seen the gospel in a new light. Even in the midst of people saying, I don't know what's going on. I am frustrated out of my mind about this thing or that. Talking to people and hearing that there's a desire to talk, there's a desire to question, there's a desire to say, Lord, just please. I've learned more about the gospel through those interactions than I could have ever imagined. I've learned more about how it is to literally hear the gospel springing up from around me. I don't expect to see the writing on the wall. I don't expect to wake up and, written on my pillow is what I need to do today and what God has in store for me. I have had this beautiful experience of being able to wake up and go onto campus and talk with you guys and hear something new about Christ, about the Bible that I would never have expected before. Carlin mentioned, you can ask me about my sleeve tattoo. There's a good reason for that. I have a bunch of tattoos, and I say this because these are all very important to me. The tattoos that I have, the significantly sized ones, I have 2 on my legs, and I have a sleeve now. They all do have very significant meaning to me. I have on my right leg, I have, from the knee to the ankle, I have a cross, and above that is a screaming face, or a face crying out. I got that in the senior year of college because the only way I made it through the 4 years before that was because I had to cry out. I had to cry out to people. I had to cry out to God. I had to cry out to the cross immediately and day in and day out and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. Please take me. Please take hold of me and comfort me. I have one on my upper arm, which is another face crying out in agony because I spent so many years wondering, where's that hope gone? What am I thinking of the future? How am I looking forward into life? And I know at the outset those both seem very negative, but in reality for me they were also a good reminder to say like, okay, but I've made it this far. May I continue to cry out. And I now have a finished sleeve. It's still peeling. It's because I finished it on Tuesday. But this is a rendition that I drew. All my tattoos are my own design. I feel like I need to have a very serious connection to them. This one is my rendition of, there are a lot of statues of Mary, but this one in particular is my reference to Mary Magdalene, my reference to the fact that she wept. Because Mary wept, I've wept, I've known many of you to weep, and yet Jesus Christ literally came to her and said, you do not need to weep, for I'm here, and guess what? There's more to come. I would not have gotten this if I didn't experience the last 3 years. Again, when I get like my larger tattoos, I have to sit on the design for at least like 6 months. It has to have meaning for me that goes over years. I would not have gotten this if I hadn't experienced the last 3 years of actually seeing to myself, we weep, and yet we're also comforted in the moment when we think there is no hope. We're told, not only is there hope, there is hope beyond hope. And that really does lead into my final verse. I love the book of Revelation. Most people don't, because it's kind of freaky and weird and stuff like that. I love it because for me, that was the first place that I really heard hope. That I really heard, Max, despite whatever you may go through, whatever you have been through, whatever it is, you will be delivered. We will be delivered. And so Revelation 21, 1 through 6 says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away.' And he who was seated on the throne said, 'Behold, I am making all things new.' Also he said, 'Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true.' And he said to me, 'It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment.'" That is a fascinating, I think Revelation is a fascinating book because it is at the end, it is this close, and again, if you've read it, it's got a lot of crazy imagery in it. It is, the book that speaks of Armageddon, or what a lot of people love to glibly say, it's doom and gloom, and it's the end of everything, there's no hope, blah, 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 blah. And yet, it is a book that ends with verses like these, that say, literally, if you talk about Revelation, it talks about the worst things happening. And a lot of this, if you actually read commentaries, it's really more of an emphasis on experiencing the worst of the worst right before that resurrection. It is experiencing the hope is lost because Jesus is dead, there's nothing left to live for, and then all of a sudden, for him to see us in the garden and say, "No, I'm here," and it's about to get a lot better. I think we have a proclivity to worry that our plans will fall through, and amazingly, that's the point. I love that our plans fall through. Personally, I have thoroughly enjoyed, and often because of your reminders, that our plans are often meant to fall through, and true peace and comfort comes when we recognize that. "Behold, I am making all things new." I don't know if I ever would have recognized the beauty of that again if I had experienced what I did in high school and college, but also what I experienced here. I talked about being vessels. I talked about we are literally here spreading the word. We are literally, in our casual conversation, in our day-to-day, we are vessels for the gospel. We are reminders, and we can be reminders to others that this is what's coming. That in the midst of having the worst week of your life because you bombed every single test imaginable, or because a loved one has passed away, or because you literally can't get yourself out of bed because you just don't feel like it. We are constantly able to remind ourselves, or to remind each other through these words, that Lord is making all things new. That for me has been hope beyond all hope. That for me has in moments when I thought to myself, I just don't know. I just don't know what I'm doing here, in the general sort of introspective aesthetic. I don't know what I'm doing here. That has been beautiful to me. That has been a moment where I've thought to myself, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't feel totally confident as an RUF intern at times. I don't feel totally confident, in my conversations. I don't feel totally confident in what I'm about to do next. I'm moving back to New York. I'm getting a new job. I don't really feel confident in all these things. I have a lot of areas where I'm just like, oh, hell, something's going to go wrong. Someone's going to mess up. I don't know. I don't have to know those things. I don't have to be okay with every step of the way. Verses like this have made that so apparent to me that in the midst of all my struggles and worries and anxieties and concerns, the Lord is making all things new. I think, you could do a whole sermon series literally just on the line, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. Wipe away every tear from their eyes. The Bible talks about this in a way that is not to say, let me just dab those tears and, again, pat it on the head. The Bible literally says, I'm going to wipe these tears away from your eyes, and you shall feel as if all those hardships and those troubles have been no more. You will feel as if you are being made new. You're not just being washed over. You're not just being like, well, let's pile some good things on top of the bad to cover it up. You're literally being told, no, I'm taking away all that pain. I'm taking away all that sorrow. And I'm telling you, you are being made new in this new heaven and new earth. In this place where joy lives. Not just where we experience joy, but where joy lives, where beauty lives, where love lives, where peace lives, where comfort lives. That is a hope that has literally caused me to cry tears of joy. That's the flip side of it, where I've gone from feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, to all of a sudden thinking, holy cow, this is the best thing imaginable in the midst of not knowing what I'm doing. My friend Hannah Moon had this quote that she wrote for me. She actually gave me this little sketchbook because she knew I always need sketchbooks. So I run through them too quickly. I'm sure not as quickly as you RISD people. Don't bug me about that. But she gave me this little sketchbook, and in it she wrote this quote. She and I have actually talked a lot about stuff like this. She's one of the people that has really gotten to know me in those regards. And she wrote, "Darkness is only darkness in the dark, so let God drag it out into the light where you will see it for what it is, powerless." When I asked her about that, I said, did you get that from somewhere? She's like, nah, I was just kind of BSing. I just really wrote it. But I was like, okay, well, you diminished the importance of it a little bit, but it was really beautiful to me when I read it. It was really beautiful to me when I read it. Let God drag that out of you and into the light. Let God take those things that you can't stand in your life, or that you question in your life, or that you just plain old don't understand in your life. Let Him drag those things out. Let Him show you that He is making all things new. Let Him show you that He is wiping the tears from your eyes. I would not understand all these things, in the same way I do now, if not for being here. I've been able to experience the gospel alongside you guys. One-on-ones, small groups, gatherings, the numerous times we've hung out and talked, did rock climbing, we've gone running, we've played soccer, we've played frisbee badly often, but I'm going to smile every day for the rest of my life because I can't tell you how much I have gained from those experiences Not just in pure like, well, I feel good about myself, I'll go home now. But literally being able to talk to you guys and think, holy cow, I think I know God more now. In having a casual conversation about how awful our Frisbee team was, I feel like I suddenly know the gospel in a new way. It's really weird to say. It's really weird to say, but I swear to you that is true. I have gone home. I went home from at least one or two of those games last year and thought to myself, oh, so this is what it means to be given grace. Because yeah, for those of you who don't know, we were bad. We were not good. But you know, people like to say you'll never know who you affect. You'll never know who will hear you. You know, I've told that to people who have graduated the last 2 years, who have asked me like, I just don't know if did I do anything? And I've told them stuff that you guys have told me. I say it all very confidentially, don't worry. But I've told them, like, you have no idea. There are people now who say, like, thank goodness so-and-so told me about this struggle in life. Or thank goodness so-and-so said, great job. Because that affected me in profound ways. Those aren't just, I think we often pull away from those and say, well, those are just niceties. And they can be. I think a lot of times we can just say things off the cuff. But I think, honestly, more often than not, when we think about it, are we able to say those things having the gospel at our core? Are we able to talk to people in our lives with the gospel as our idol? With the gospel as the lens through which we are able to funnel our conversation, even if it is just about Frisbee. You never know who your words will affect. So really, why not let them be the gospel? I mean, you've done that for me. It's been 3 years, and you have unabashedly done that for me in ways I could never imagine. I'm just going to close on that that's hope for me. That's hope for me in a tangible way. When people talk about, like, I worry that I don't see the gospel in a tangible way. I worry that I don't see my relationship with God in a tangible way. For me, this is one of those moments. This is when I'm able to get up here and look back over the past 3 years and say, holy cow, God was talking to me every single step of the way, in things I did, in conversations I had with you guys, and things we did collectively. So yeah, that closing. You really never know who you're in contact with, who you're around in the midst of your own struggles. And let God drag these things out into the light. And let the gospel take hold. I really do think that. Let's pray. Lord, I really do want to thank you again for this experience, this time that I've had here. It is absolutely going to be bittersweet for me in a way that I don't know how I'm going to cope. Don't call me at certain hours, I'm sure I'll be crying. Lord, I really do want to thank you for this. I want to thank you for the opportunity that you've given all of us to interact with each other in a way that you have expressed in the Bible and that we often read and don't quite understand until we are actively there, until we are actively in a group or in a one-on-one or on a football field running after a Frisbee, that we suddenly realize you're in the midst of us, that we suddenly realize you have called us by our name when we thought there was no hope, and that in the midst of us, you are wiping away the tear from our eyes. So I do pray for all these things. I pray that we would continually remind each other of that hope, that we would talk to you and hear that hope, that we would look to you and see that hope, that we would reach out and grasp you and feel that hope, that despite our troubles and our concerns, our wildest fears and anxieties, that you have surrounded us and enveloped us and quieted us and sung to us in ways that we could never hope to understand, but in an incredibly beautiful way. Pray all these things in your Son's name.